Hello. Hello, welcome to Ascension. I've just got a couple of quick admin bits because we're going to begin shortly. First of all, toilets. We have toilets just in the hall and to the right. If you carry on going, you won't miss them. There's a set of cubicles and an accessible toilet there. There's a second accessible toilet just where you came in the reception. Just over there, it's clearly signposted. Second of all, fire alarms. We're not expecting a drill today, so if it does go off, fire exit is that way, and there's a bit of a garden out there that we can collect in as well, but we don't expect that to be happening. Third of all, anybody sat on this side, you're going to be in the back of your head at least is going to be in the live stream. So if you don't want that, move to another place in the hall. And fourth of all, we've got coffee and tea being served over there. So if you'd like to get some before we begin, please do. And we have a little basket set up for donations as well. And also, if you don't want your photograph being taken today, please do grab a coloured sticker, the brightly coloured stickers over there at the coffee desk, and wear one so people can clearly see who doesn't want to be photographed. And that's everything from me. Thank you.
Just a very heartfelt, warm welcome from the church. It's a thrill to have you here. Well done, Acorn and the Greater Manchester Coalition of Disabled People for putting on this event. It's wonderful that you've done it. And well done the candidates who come. So thank you for coming. It's going to be a great night. And I'll hand over to my friend here.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. The candidates that are coming are already here, so we will be able to start bang on 6:30. So we just want to say a little bit about the three organisations and also GM Immigration Aid, I think. Are they here? Yay. Okay. Just want to say a bit about our organisations to also, hey, why not join them? They're great. So I'm from the Great Manchester Coalition of Disabled People, which is gmcdp.com. Nothing about us without us. Yeah! And membership at the moment is free. So if you're a disabled person, you can join as a disabled person. We are a DPO, which means we are led and fully staffed by disabled people, working from the social model. If you're an ally of disabled people, there's another kind of membership for that as well. So, yeah, directly to Shabazz over there. Hang on a minute. So please support your local DPO. And we also work with 16 other DPOs around Greater Manchester on the Greater Manchester Disabled People's Panel. We used to work with Andy Burnham. I don't know what's happened to that guy. But it's an important part of how disabled people advance our rights in the community and influence policy at the highest level where we can. So I'd now like to hand over to Living Income or Acorn, whichever you want to do.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Rick. So my name's James. I'm chair of Acorn Manchester. So we put this Hustings together basically because Acorn, if you don't know, we're a community union, not just a tenants union, but a lot of what the work we do is centered around housing justice and renters' rights. You've probably seen one of the flyers that one of our members has produced about the Renters' Rights Act. It's talking about the improvements that we've seen. Acorn was part of the coalition that fought for that Renters' Rights Act to see sort of a gradual improvement in the way that the law can protect renters. But Acorn as a community union basically uses the same methods as like a trade union would, which is that as individuals in this society, we're often under the pressure of a lot of different oppressions from the state, from landlords, from bosses, from CEOs. And the only way that we can fight back against that and help support ourselves to build a better world is by working together with our neighbours, with our colleagues, with our friends and our families to be able to build a better world. So you'll probably see that there's not a lot of candidates that have come tonight. There are, I think, 7 people standing to be Greater Manchester Mayor. Contacted all the candidates. We asked them all to come. We told them it was a cost of living hustings, which was extremely important to people right across the city region. We told them it was the only fully accessible hustings. Thank you very much to CDP for their work on that. You see, we've got BSL and we've got live stream. And unfortunately, we only had 2 candidates who've said that they're going to come along. So it's very disappointing to hear. I completely agree. I have Geraldine Coggins from the Green Party and Richard Kilpatrick from the Lib Dems. I'm going to come back to you when we've got questions. I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm just here to speak because I like the sound of my own voice. If we took a what? More of them would have come if we told them it wasn't. You know what? They all attended the mill hustings, which had to charge £5 to be able to get in. So maybe they are just interested in, I don't know, making money for the mill. Anyway, the reason why I wanted to mention that is because what you're going to see tonight is one example of how politics works in this country, which is you're not happy about the way the law is. You vote someone in, they wear a different colour tie or a different colour dress. Maybe they change some laws, maybe they don't. People think that that's what politics is in this country, but that's not all politics is. Politics is you and your colleagues speaking at work, you and your housemate discussing your landlord and your rent going up. Politics is the every single day decisions that affect you and your life. And we would all benefit a lot from readjusting our view of politics from one person that we elect is going to come and save the world to a view where, just like you said, nothing about us without us. It's the same idea. The world is not going to be saved by people we elect into positions of power. The world is saved by us as we organise to improve our own houses, our workplaces, our communities. So please do take the information about the Renters' Right Act. If you're not a member of ACORN already, why not? Please come along to future events and help us build the power we need to be able to hold these, whoever is elected, be they here or not, hold them to account and make sure that they do build a better world for us. Thank you. Over to Molly.
Hi everyone, my name is Molly. I am a organiser, one of the organisers, alongside people like James, on the Greater Manchester Living Income campaign. And I can see lots of our community members in the room, which is just beautiful. The Greater Manchester Living Income campaign is a campaign to transform the social security system. We know it doesn't work for most people in this country. We know people don't get enough money to live on. We know that the conditions that people have to abide by do not work, and they don't treat people like human beings. So a coalition of us, to begin with, 4 organisations got together a couple of years ago to create this wonderful, wonderful campaign where we want to campaign for a pilot of a new social security system here in Greater Manchester, where 200 households would, number 1, have enough money to live on. Shock horror, so radical. And number 2, they would be treated like human beings within that pilot. It's been one of the most joyous, hopeful campaigns that I've ever been a part of. We are now a coalition of 50 organisations representing 60,000 people across Greater Manchester. We had the support of our current Prime Minister, Mr. Burnham, who is gone. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was do a combined hustings with some of our coalition partners, the Greater Manchester Coalition for Disabled People, ACORN, and also our friends at Immigration Aid Unit in the room as well. Because like James said, politics happens in rooms like this with people like us organising for a better future for ourselves and our families and our neighbours. So if you want more information, there's some flyers and stuff over there, or just grab me and we can have a conversation. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to see everybody.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Shah, and I'm from Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. We were set up 35 years ago as a community-based response from Greater Manchester residents, anti-racist response to immigration raids that were happening in the city. We work with people affected by immigration control. So our friends, our families, our neighbours, our colleagues, us, the fabric of Greater Manchester. And as this is a cost of living hustings for the GM Mayor, I wanted to explain what we do by talking about the GM strategy, which applies to all of us, no matter how long we've been in this place, because we're all GM residents. The GM strategy commits our local politicians to creating a thriving city region where everyone can live a good life. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It's a good ambition, but one of the reasons why it gets eroded is because of national laws and policies that cut across it, and they disproportionately affect people here on the basis of race, class, and gender. And they're laws like immigration. They're laws that tie us as GM residents to paying years of exorbitant immigration fees that turn us into the government's cash cow. They enslave us to no recourse to public funds that lock us out of basic support when we need it. And they keep us stuck on long routes to settlement that bake uncertainty and insecurity into our lives and the lives of our families. So what do we do about it? And as has already been said, the only thing we can do is organise, right? And as a group of women once told me, we might be broke, but we're not broken. And so I've brought along some flyers. Because in 2024, after the last general election, a group of us, there's now 50 organisations across 10 local authorities, have come together around a set of expectations for our local politicians and what we want to see them do to make sure that that GM strategy applies to all of us. And there are three things that are key, one of which is to listen to people with lived experience. The second of which is to be accountable to us as GM residents. And the third is to speak out about the importance of 5 core principles: welcome, safety, justice, home, and support for all GM residents. And it feels really important to be saying that in this place, given this place's history. So we'll talk to the mayoral candidates about this. We'll talk to them after the 30th of July, whether one of them is mayor, whether they end up being councillors. But if this is the first you're hearing about the expectations, and you and the groups and the community organisations you're involved with are not yet signed up to the expectations but might like to find out more, come and find me. I've got the flyers with me, in solidarity from all of us at Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so I just want to introduce to our wonderful BSL, Craig and Pam. We'll try and keep a steady pace so we don't exhaust you, because I know we can sometimes get too fast. And also we've got 2 PAs, personal assistants, for any needs you might have during the event. And they're over there, and that is Toyosi and Jessica. So if you need any assistance, they are there to help you out. So without any further ado, let's introduce and welcome the candidates who've agreed to engage in democracy with us, which is fantastic. So please, a warm welcome for Geraldine Coggins of the Green Party and Richard Kilpatrick of the Liberal Democrats Party. Yeah. So we've said that you can do an opening statement up to 4 minutes, and we've got timekeepers. they're there looking at you in a very timekeepery way. And because there's only 2 of you, I was able to flip a coin, and the winner is, so the first one to give their opening speech is Geraldine for the Greens.
Great, thank you so much. Shall I move this a little bit?
You can take it in your hand if you want. Or
Yeah, I'll just rotate it. Never mind, I'll just...
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It's so lovely to see so many of you, and thank you to the other candidate who also came. This has been an amazing campaign. This is the last of many, many, many hustings we have done. Richard and I are joking that we're going to do one next week where we all say each other's lines, but we all want to play the role of reform, unfortunately, so it may be a rather boring hustings. My name is Geraldine Coggins. I'm the Green Party candidate in this election. I've been a councillor on Trafford Council for 8 years now, and I'm the leader of the group there. I've done about 4 years of that all together. I was one of the first Greens elected onto Trafford Council. I joined the Green Party in the run-up to the 2010 general election when I had 2 small children. And I knew that the climate emergency was going to be the biggest issue affecting their lives. And I looked at the ballot and I saw there were 3 candidates there from the 3 old parties. And I just thought, none of these people are taking this seriously. This is the most important thing our children will face in their lifetimes. And it's just not even on the agenda. So I decided to join the Green Party, and I didn't have a candidate to vote for that time. Next time around in 2015, I had a Green candidate on the ballot because I voted for myself. And by then I was campaigning to try and get our first Green councillors elected in Altrincham, and everyone told us it can't be done. Altrincham is, thorough Conservative, true blue territory. You will never elect a Green there. Well, in 2018, my colleague Dan and I were elected as the first Greens on Trafford Council. And Trafford had never even had a 4th party before. They had to go and find a office for us. And we took it out of Conservative control, and it's never gone back to Conservative control since. So I'm telling you this really as a bit of background to say, I'm someone who has just looked at what's happening in the world and looked at our political system and thought, this is broken and I need to do something about it. I'm not a career politician. I joined the Green Party when we had 0 MPs. I'm just here to try and fix things for my children, for all of us, for all of our children, and for our children's children. A lot of people think this election is about who runs Greater Manchester, but I think really it's about who Greater Manchester is run for. And for too long now, we know it has been run for big developers, for corporate landlords who are building these enormous, expensive luxury flats, while normal people's rents are going up and up and up. We know that our young people can't afford to move out of home. We know that too many of our young people can't find meaningful work or even any work. So this election is our chance to end that, to tell Labour and the old establishment parties that we are done. We are done with this. It's time to take Greater Manchester back from big money, to run this as a city for the people who live here. So I'm standing to be a mayor who puts people and planet before profit. The point of those skyscrapers isn't about us at all. It's about lining the pockets of the super rich. And they tell us, Labour go bang on about the economic success that we see in Greater Manchester. Well, in some places we do see that success. Probably if you step out the door here, it looks like a story of economic success. But if you knock on the doors here, you will hear a very different story. We need rent controls. We need to change the way our system works. I want to create 20,000 genuinely affordable homes. I want to give free buses to everyone under 22 so young people can get out and about. Imagine the freedom you would have if you woke up every morning knowing that you could visit any part of our diverse city region of 3 million people for free. Imagine the options and opportunities that will become available for you. Oh, no, really? Oh, I've got so much more to say. I will say it in a minute, but we're here to tell you that it's time to replace Labour, to stop reform, and to elect our first Green mayor.
Hello, everyone. I'll come down here, actually, because I feel a bit better. My name is Richard Kilpatrick. I'm a councillor here in the city of Manchester, and I have been since 2018, on and off. And I will be the Liberal Democrat candidate in this election. And I want to start by talking about, actually, I think, a story that I'm sure many people in the audience will agree with and sympathise with, which is that politics in this country, quite frankly, is broken. I think everyone can understand that. The relationship that used to exist between people and the people that seek their vote at election time no longer really exists. And I think generations after generations have come to be pretty disappointed in what they expect from their services, trying to navigate services, trying to get some of the basic things out of councils, of GMP, of the NHS, of anything really, is almost impossible. And I think it's designed that way. I think it's designed to make it really difficult to navigate. And as a result, we've got a situation where people are often being turned to extremes. And it feels now more than ever, it's certainly the case on the doorstep, that people feel that they have to go to extremes. And I want to try and offer a bit of hope in this debate and a bit of hope across Greater Manchester, because I know that this city region has great advocates trying every single day to improve the lives of Mancunians. Now, when I'm on the doorstep in this election, I'll be really honest, one very, very, very key number one issue is coming up, and that's affordability, and it's as simple as that. Now, I think that we can make Greater Manchester affordable again. And from listening to a lot of people on the doorstep in this election, I think we need to prioritise three very key areas. One is that it is almost impossible to find affordable childcare across the city region. There are large sections of Greater Manchester where it's just not working, the market isn't working. Secondly, on housing, as a councillor who sits on Manchester City Council's planning committee, I can tell you that it is an absolute sham what has happened in the city over the last 20 years. More and more unaffordable properties being built to line the pockets of someone that no one really knows where they are, and we can't really determine whether those properties are going to people in the city region. And when in the past I've called them out for being a sham, I've been shouted down by those people, those services that defend themselves when they get called out. And I think that we can deliver the most recent cooperative and the home of the cooperative movement right here in Greater Manchester to deliver housing in a cooperative model and to make sure that it is affordable, that it is social rent and social housing that is being built across the city region in town centres, but also in the city centre of Manchester. And then finally, it's pretty clear that we need to end what is a postcode lottery when it comes to our social care and access to our social care system, but also the direct payment system. You can live in Trafford and have a totally different relationship with your local authority in the direct payment system. You can live in Manchester and it'd be totally different as well. If you move between those boundaries, which I'll be really honest, only political geeks like me really care about, then actually your experience can be totally different. And I think we need to end that. But what's really clear is that councils don't really know what's happening between one borough and another. So we need to end what is a postcode lottery in our social care. And I think we can do that by commissioning the first city region-wide assessment of affordability, access and quality of our social care across Greater Manchester. Now, I hope that that's just a start. And actually, Geraldine and I will agree that actually in these hustings, it's all about listening to the issues that are important to you. Because if we listen a bit more, then maybe that broken politics that I spoke about at the start might end. We might be a little bit nicer to each other. And I think we deserve the politics of consociationalism. So thank you so much for listening to us. I really look forward to your questions. And thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll start with, we've got loads of questions that were sent in ahead of time. So we sort of split them into three sections. So start with a disability question. Haha. So Shabazz Mohammed, you've got the first question. I'll come over and you can, with the mic. To remind you.
Oh, the panel.
Yeah.
Right. I have so many questions for you guys, but do you want to hold it?
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you guys, but the main one I'm going to ask you right now is I've been sitting on the disability panel for the last 8 years with our lovely previous mayor who promised us the earth and then delivered very little. I just wanted to ask you guys straight up, will you be mayor's panels, and will you give us the people more power, because you as mayors will get more power off the supposed prime minister? So can I get a commitment off you that you will continue the panels and that devolve the powers to us? To both of you.
Thanks, Shabazz, for the question. Is this working? Someone here? Thanks, Shabazz, for the question. The short answer to the question is yes, but I want to build on that because I actually think that the scrutiny system of the Mayor of Greater Manchester is utterly broken. I think we've spent far too long with a political party that isn't represented here, that hasn't turned up here, that actually enjoys that centralised power. And as someone who sits on some of the scrutiny panels of Greater Manchester, I can tell you the quality of the scrutiny is utterly woeful. And it's the reason why we really struggle to hold to account big organisations like GMP, like some of the decisions that are made in preventative health as well. But in terms of the disabled panel and everything that comes with it, yes, but actually we want to give it much more teeth. We want to make sure that you are co-designing policy in Greater Manchester, because we need to end this idea that policy comes from the top and it filters its way down, because it never really does it? The only thing that gets filtered down is what the mayor at the time is willing to give you and willing to devolve down. And I think that's not good enough. I think we need to improve the way that we design policy across Greater Manchester, and we need to lead the way on it. So absolutely, we need to empower panels. We need to get you in the room. And actually, I think organisations like that, but also organisations that involve lots of other different parts of the community should be brought into the accountability process, so that you can openly call us through account if we are elected and we don't do what we tell you that we will do.
Yeah, thanks, Shabazz. I would agree as well, obviously, with continuing the panels. And really, a lot of what Richard has said, we need to be doing a lot more co-design, working with people, lots of different lived experience, listening to your voices and to the voices of groups, by and for groups who can tell us what we really need. I think making things inclusive by design is got to be really important in everything that we're planning, and certainly in all my plans around housing and transport. I want to be focusing on making sure things are inclusive by design, and that really wide range of people are consulted straight up. In fact, in the Green Party, we really believe in giving power back to people, and that's why in my manifesto I've got plans for citizens' assemblies, where we can get a really diverse range of voices from across Greater Manchester to make big decisions. The first one I'd like to have is on road safety, because 1,000 people a year are killed on our roads in Greater Manchester, killed or seriously injured, which is absolutely horrendous. But I would like to use this mechanism for lots of different things. And crucially, we have to pay people for their time in doing it, because we know that if we're relying on people to volunteer, or to be, if people are picked out by sortition, but only can do it if they're able to find that space in their lives, that time in their lives without being paid, that we will not get a representative sample. So I want to actually work with our people, the people of Greater Manchester, with all their amazing, wonderful diversity, and hear those voices and use that as part of the decision-making process, so that this isn't about a mayor who makes decisions for you. This is about us making decisions together.
Yeah, all of those are lovely words, but I hope somebody's recording this so we can hold you to account in a couple of years' time.
Absolutely.
And the one positive thing I wanted to say was I was really happy that the Green Party was willing to pay us for our time. So that's a good start. Thank you.
Thanks, Shabazz. And yeah, this is being recorded, and it's also going out on the internet. Hello, the internet. Molly, your turn.
Okay, this next question is from Madeleine Hale. Is Madeleine here? Oh, it's such a good question. I'm going to ask it because it's a good question. Just checking that Madeleine's not online. Okay, I'm going to ask it. In terms of Manchester's response to the cost of living crisis, Greater Manchester's response, what initiatives would you keep the same, and what are you planning to change?
Great question, Madeleine. Really, my whole manifesto is about tackling the cost of living crisis. And of course, it's also about tackling the climate crisis, because it turns out the solutions to one are also the solutions to the other. So I want to create 20,000 genuinely affordable homes. And by genuinely affordable, I mean you'll be able to afford to rent these if you are on housing benefit. We're going to build 10,000, and the other 10,000 we're going to buy, fix up and retrofit. So all of these will be warm, cozy houses for you to live in that are cheap to heat and are going to be cutting our carbon emissions at the same time. I want a healthy homes program where landlords are properly licensed, and we are not relying on you finding a decent landlord who's going to keep your house in good condition. It's absolutely unacceptable the amount of freedom landlords have got and the miserable and frankly dangerous conditions that too many of our families are living in. So I want to work with the 10 council leaders so that we have standards right across the board. And crucially, I'm going to fund and bring in enforcement so that we can actually go into those houses and make that happen. We are not relying. Labour has a good landlords charter. I'm not worried about the good landlords. I'm worried about the other landlords. You know, a voluntary process isn't what we need here. We need to get to grips with this problem. I've also got plans for free buses for everyone under 22. I mentioned that in the intro. This is about changing young people's lives, putting some extra money in their pockets. It's also about the next generation. You know, imagine a generation of children who grows up knowing that the bus is the obvious, free, safe, pleasant way to get around. You know, this is going to change the way our city region works for generations to come. Jobs. So that Homes for Greater Manchester, my 20,000 homes plan across 10 years, that's going to involve a lot of jobs. We want to have well-paid jobs. We want 5% of all on-site jobs to be trainees or apprentices so people can get into the sector. I want Greater Manchester to be an absolute leader in green construction and in retrofit, so that in a year or two's time, people are saying, why can't we be more like Greater Manchester? We're going to send people to Greater Manchester to learn how they're doing this, because young people, as we know, are really struggling to get jobs. They're struggling to move out of home. And finally, I want to keep wealth circulating in our local economy. So we've been talking about how so much of what has been given to those big developers has been siphoned off by them, often to other countries where they're not even paying tax here. So I'm really going to focus on working with local developers on as much as we can buying the supply, so we are keeping things in-house. And all that rent that is coming in from those 20,000 homes, they'll be public assets forever. That will keep bringing in more and more income to our councils, that will help build the next generation of houses, that will help maintain our houses. And this is a whole well thought through plan that integrates the things that we need in terms of tackling our cost of living crisis right now and looking towards the future.
I think Madeleine's question is a really important one. So I want to try and stick to the structure of the question. So on what we would keep the same, I'll be honest and say that each council does things very, very differently. And actually the standardization across councils is really important. So one example of that is things like council tax support differs from council to council. It is really frustrating when you then look at the whole conurbation and understand that actually someone who is struggling in Stockport has different set of rules to what's happening in Manchester. So actually, one of the powers of the Mayor of Greater Manchester is to convene and to standardise. I think it's one of the key areas that we need to do. And in doing so, in terms of things that I would keep the same, there are lots of initiatives that happen in the city of Manchester that I'd like to see rolled out. Things like warm spaces, the way that they use discretionary payments is important, but that standardisation, knowing that there's a guarantee and that there's a process that's the same across Greater Manchester, is really key to that. To our Acorn friends in the room, I've always supported your campaign to end the use of bailiffs when it comes to council tax. It's a campaign that I have always supported. I think sometimes when I was the only councillor in the room supporting it, actually. And I would actually like to see that utterly standardised across Greater Manchester, so that people who find them, and this comes from a lad from Middlesbrough whose parents had bailiffs at the door on a regular basis, and the anxiety that caused me as a kid, and often I was the one sent to the door to answer the door because the bailiff wouldn't actually take any action if I was to answer the door, but would if my dad did. All of that sort of stuff comes up in my mind, and I think there's so much more that we can do to standardise the support for people who are facing a cost of living crisis, because when we talk about the cost of living crisis, it's also a debt crisis. And so we have to do a lot more to standardise the process and provide a Manchester safety net that might be different to the rest of the country, but it sets an example, doesn't it? It means that we're not going to put people further into debt, because if we add to the cost of living crisis by doing that, then I don't think we can really say that we're dealing with the crisis to start with. I'm not going to repeat myself on what I said in my opening statement, which was around the cost of childcare, and I'm sure we will talk about housing and how we can deal with the impact on housing. But I also think that we do need to provide good jobs. We need to provide well-paid jobs. We need to end this idea that, you know, that Manchester is a private sector only, equity only city. And I think that we can do that by developing the mayoral development corporations, making sure that those expand, but actually that we're putting community businesses and community benefit at the heart of those and not the private sector. All of that, I hope, will deliver the good jobs that will get us out of this perpetual crisis of cost of living as well. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.
So this next question is from Megan Hassett. Is Megan in the room? Is Megan online? Nope. No worries. We can read out for you. So Megan's question is, renters across Greater Manchester are struggling with the cost of rent. Despite the progress with the Renters' Rights Act, the issue remains renting in Greater Manchester is unaffordable. What do you propose is the solution to this? I.e., what is needed to make renting fairer and crucially more affordable for renters across GM?
We need rent controls. It's obvious, isn't it? I mean, if you have a system where people can put up rents as much as they want, as often as they want, what's to stop them doing it? And nothing is the answer. And all that we have seen is our rents going up and up and up. We've seen homelessness going up and up and up. We've seen temporary accommodation going up and up and up. You know, I think about the kids I know in temporary accommodation in my ward in Altrincham, where I'm a counsellor, you know, who know they haven't got a safe, warm, secure place to call home, who know that they might get moved out of their community into a different school at any moment. It's just outrageous that we have gotten to this situation that, you know, in 2026, somehow we have more and more people. We have record waiting lists for social homes. So rent controls is a big part of the answer. I was so deeply disappointed on Friday, I think it was, or Thursday, when the new government announced that they were not going to consider rent controls. I did go along to Number 10 North with a letter, actually, to deliver myself. Because, of course, the old mayor had expressed sympathy for this view and some support for it when he was mayor, and now that his establishment is able to make the decisions, unfortunately he has decided not to consider this, and it is people in our communities who will be literally paying the price for years and years to come. Another part of the picture that we need to change is the mass sell-off of social housing. So we know that it's pretty much impossible for councils or housing associations to build large amounts of social housing, because we know that they will ultimately be forced to sell it off at a loss under right to buy or right to acquire, and they will end up having poured all that money into it and then not having that asset in the end, and that so many of those sold off via right to buy actually end up in the hands of, guess who? Landlords, and we end up paying housing benefit into them. So it's just another way of funneling money from our public taxpayers' money into the pockets of landlords. So I think a huge part of this job, you know, people talk about this being the biggest job in British politics outside of Westminster. I think that is true. And that is why we need an opposition mayor. We need someone who is going to hold this Labour government to account. You know, the old mayor was the same party, but he acted like the opposition. I'm afraid the new candidate is showing no signs of doing that. We need a mayor who's going to make use of that voice. And if Labour lose Greater Manchester, they will absolutely have to listen to the voice of the Green Mayor of Greater Manchester. And I will be using that to argue for rent controls, to argue against the mass sell-off of social housing, and to get those legislative changes. And I have to say, the flip side of that is, if we lose Greater Manchester, if it goes to reform, we know that Labour cannot be trusted, and they have in the past caved to the demands of reform, and that they will again. So we need to, I'm afraid, back to the same thing again. We need to replace Labour. We need to stop reform, and we need a Green Mayor who will hold this Labour government to account.
Yeah, the perpetual growth of the city centre, has resulted in rents going through the roof, and actually it's resulted in rents going through the roof across the city region, right? I do believe in rent controls. It's something that I've argued for a very long time. How that's delivered now that the city centre has been sold off, it is difficult to tell. But actually, we also need to improve housing standards as well in that. And I think that we can do this actually through the powers of the spatial framework. When we talk about the spatial framework and how it has been sort of sold to us in the past, is that we just need to build more and more executive housing. More and more executive housing needs to be built everywhere. The reality of the situation is that Greater Manchester does need more housing. It needs about 150,000 houses built yesterday, but it needs 150,000 affordable houses built yesterday, doesn't it? And actually, when we talk about affordable housing, we actually mean social housing, because that's the most affordable house. Now, because of the development in the city centre, that has resulted in rent increases in the rest of the city region. We also have to look at viability assessments. Viability assessments are the thing where developers will tell me often, oh, we couldn't possibly make any of our development affordable or give it to a social housing provider or contribute even financially to future house building in affordable or social house building, because we would lose money. And often they tell me, actually, the development will lose money, even in its current form. And I think to myself, well, you're certainly not a charity, are you? And when they tell me that they couldn't possibly contribute to social housing, but they will put in a cinema, a sauna, a steam room, a running track on the roof, I have to be honest, and it's one of the things that makes me go home and think, what am I doing? Why am I even bothering? Because if that's the answer we get to some of the solving of the issues, and they hide behind national legislation, then we need to change that national legislation. And let's be really clear, Andy Burnham would have agreed with us tonight, but he's got nowhere to hide now, has he? So if we want actual change, we want to be able to deliver that change, we have to end the sham of viability assessments, which is giving money to consultants to give excuses to developers. One thing that we will guarantee is that if we had a Liberal Democrat mayor, we would not spend a single penny of Greater Manchester loan funding given to a developer who will hide behind viability assessments and refuse to build social and affordable housing. It's the minimum we should expect of developers in this city. And then finally, on right to buy, I totally agree, but also on mergers, I think we need to be in a situation where housing associations are getting bigger and bigger because their finances are getting harder and harder. Like the area that I represent, its housing association is going through a merger, and we need to make sure that people, tenants, are in the heart of that process, because what I don't want is tenants' voices to be diluted in that either.
Okay, thanks. Is Jayothi Cross here? No, okay, so we'll go to Rupi. And these are a question about social care.
Can you remind me what I'm saying? Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name's Rupi. I'm a resident in Trafford, actually. So it's taken me years to get funding for direct payments. And, you know, you constantly reassessed every year as well for needing it and stuff. And also, so I finally got the care package that I need. And then a couple of years ago, like, I had to move house. So, and then in order to move house, I needed to think about my local authority and how they fund my support, because I knew if I moved to another area, they might not be able to fund my support properly. So my question to both of you is, how are you thinking of tackling social care? Because the rhetoric is, you know, social care is on its needs and it needs a reform. And also, how are we going to ensure that councils are standardised in their approach? And my big ask is, will you ever commit to social care being free at the point of charge, at the point of use? So yeah.
Thank you, Ruby. It's good to see another Trafford person here. Yeah, I know there are so many problems when people need to move across borders. Like Greater Manchester works together in so many different ways. And then if you need help, often it certainly seems to stop at the border of Manchester and Trafford and just outside Hume. There's some kind of barrier and your systems can't move across. And one of the ways this works is in waiting lists for social homes. I've got a plan to have a mobility scheme where all the councils leave aside about 5% of their homes for people in other boroughs, so that we can have people moving from one part of Greater Manchester to the other. And we need to particularly make sure that works for homes that have particular access needs as well, so that people have real options. We in the Green Party would love to see all social care free at the point of use. The difference between health and social care is so hard to define, and yet they seem to be well able to define it when it comes to finding the bill, doesn't it? Once we know that one is free and the other isn't. I think I'd like to do everything I can in the power of the mayor to support this, to again use that strong voice on Westminster to say that this is something that needs to be taken seriously. We know that the new Prime Minister is making noise about social care, and it's about time someone has done. So it remains to be seen, I think, whether that noise manifests into actual action. But absolutely, as a Green Mayor, I will be doing everything I can to again push Labour into taking action on this. We need cross-party working on this. It's one of those difficult ones that basically is very expensive, and that's why we need cross-party working. So we need some sort of security that means it won't be used as a wedge issue at the next general election. So I think it's really important that we can work together on this and try and find a solution, because we're all going to need social care sometime, probably. So, it doesn't make sense that people are putting this off. So we'll do the absolute best to push the Labour government in the right direction on this.
Thanks, Rupi. I'll tell you why I'm so passionate about it. My mum was diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's and dementia at 56. And you'd think I'd been only used to talking about this, but I'm not actually. And the advocacy that I had to go through to get her the basic decency from the local authority that she was in at the time. Honestly, you could write a book on it, but it's not going to be any different to your experience, if I'm really honest. And it just shows me that, just how much we let people down. Why, as I said at the start, it's those services that should be there in your corner, right? It should be basic stuff. And in fact, I was at Hustings, it seems like we're at Hustings every night.
Every night.
But sometimes too. Just the other night, and I got another case of someone in Manchester that I'm now trying to help with exactly the same issue, where someone's got a degenerative condition, and they've been reassessed, and they're going to get less help than they had previously. It's like, I know, I was going to swear there. I need to not swear. But it's infuriating. And that's why I want to talk about it at this election, because even though the powers lie in the local authorities and actually at national level, I think there is a role for the GM Mayor in this, actually. It's about standardising the process. And it means that, sometimes, by the way, like some councils, even when you've moved, Manchester may be the authority that actually deal with your process. And because you've moved over the border, they're not as bothered, actually. So they're going to be slower in getting back to you because the impact isn't as much and they're not really that bothered. And this is how we deal every single day with officers that do that. And it infuriates me massively, just because I remember needing to do this for my mum. And where I'm from, we say ma'am, so I will drop into that every now and again. But so we need to standardise, big time we need to standardise. And yes, we need more support from central government because we know the budget impact that it has on local authorities. But if we don't standardise, we will have this postcode lottery. We have it now, I'll be honest. And I don't know the specifics of your case or the specifics of your local area, but I know for a fact it will be different a couple of miles down the road because Trafford is not a big borough geographically. So we need to do much, much better. And I think the role of Greater Manchester Mayor can force that to happen. In terms of your answer on, of your question on whether it should be, listen, absolutely. If there's one thing that my generation does in my mum's memory, I hope would be to accept that it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what condition you have, but it should just be basic human rights that you have access to care. And before I make myself a little bit blubbery, I'm going to end there.
Okay, fingers crossed this person's here. We've got Cora Tull Ann Mogal. Oh, for goodness sake. Got such bad luck. Okay, Louisa Graves. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna read a question that combines their questions, which is, if elected, what are you gonna do to help ordinary working class families that are struggling to afford basics like food, holiday clubs for kids, and school uniform?
Thanks to those people for the question. I guess it's touching a lot on what we've been talking about earlier about cost of living. You know, we hear so many different types of, you know, we have poverty, we have food poverty, we have fuel poverty, we have period poverty, we have bed poverty, we have school uniform poverty. At some point, we just need to accept that the problem is poverty, the problem is inequality. I am a councillor in Trafford, and the inequality there is absolutely stark. You can see it in every map we see. We get, you know, all these heat maps, and you can see a heat map of, say, income across Trafford, and then you can see another of health outcomes, and another of education level, and even you could see it in COVID. It's like the same pattern each time, you know, all these things. It's one problem that we have, isn't it? And it just feels like we've just had 15 years of austerity from the Tories, and we all had so much hope, and that we've just seen this continuation of austerity from Labour. Trafford Council is on the verge of being bankrupt. We had really hoped that the government's fair funding review would save our public services, and in fact it has made it worse. It's really, really hard to believe. We've had to be bailed out by the government the last 2 years, running £10 million first time, 12 million the next time. People get in touch with me about potholes, and I say to people, because I see behind the scenes, the potholes are like a symbol of the situation we're in. Potholes are the bit you see when you go out on the road, but our social care, our health system, our fire system, our police, our councils, everything else is in the same state as our roads, and the potholes are the visible bit. It's like the tip of the iceberg that we see, and we know that everything else is broken. So I've got the plans I've talked about earlier about, you know, genuinely affordable rent, about free buses for people under 22, about, you know, real good, well-paid jobs for our young people, about keeping wealth local. And actually, I want to publish the figures on how much of the mayor's funding and GMCA funding stays local, and publish that every year so that we can be held to account and we can see that progress. But I think a lot of this needs deep change at a national level. So I think that is, again, where I would be using that strong green voice, you know, to call for the changes. So we need to call for a system that says, you know what, big corporations and wealthy people have to pay their way so that the rest of us can have the services we deserve. And we know that that makes a society that is better for everyone, where everyone is happier, where everyone has a better health service, because equal societies are happier societies, and they work for us all.
So I think one of the areas to start with is, okay, how can the role of the mayor ensure that actually good funding goes to the right places? Because I think often people have this idea that only local authorities are service deliverers, and that's just not true. In fact, less and less now, actually, and more community groups, faith, community sector, you know, charity sector, it's all there. But it's just like, how do we make sure that this, if it's true that we're in 14 years of perpetual growth, then how do we make sure that those organisations are at the front line of delivering services, getting the money in those communities in order to make a difference to ordinary people's lives? Now, there is something called social value. For people who don't know what social value is, it's what we should be expecting the people who make a lot of money from the city region, the contractors, the businesses, and the big employers, everything else. We should be expecting more through their contracts, that they should be delivering more through social value, either through financial contributions or otherwise. And that's where I would start. I think some local authorities are very, very good at it. I know that City of Manchester is much further ahead than others. I mean, Trafford, famously, it is not as good, but I know that I'm sure Geraldine's putting a lot of pressure on the local authority there to make sure that it is. But we do, again, I keep saying it, but we do need to standardise it. We need to make sure that social value, the money that is being made by people in this city region, and this is a lot of money, is getting to those community groups that make a real difference on the ground. And that means that can be your local food bank. We all wish that it didn't exist, but it can be the local food bank that is getting that investment. It can be a small group that is, I have a group in my local area that every single Monday it's a gardening group. It's based around, it's delivering, trying to deal with the social isolation issue. It's funding that should be available to them as well. And you do have to advocate at the minute, and it's really difficult. And it's trying to get money from, Biffa, who makes a lot of money from this city, and Amy, who another contractor that makes a lot of money from this city, trying to get that right down to those community groups. And it should be easier. It should be easier for groups to access, because I think ordinary families actually are looking to those as service deliverers and actually as trusted service deliverers. And I think we need to do more to support them. It goes without saying that the Live Well programme is good. We'd like to see it expanded. I think the Mayor's charity, the Greater Manchester Mayor's charity, is very good on homelessness. It'd be interesting to see if we could actually standardise social value through that as well. But it's also about good jobs, isn't it? It's making sure that we have good jobs, that we have good housing, and we deliver that wraparound service. Because actually, if we deliver good jobs and we deliver good housing, then actually, like, families hopefully will not be in the same level of need.
So next question is from Sophie.
Hiya, I'm Sophie. I'm the lead campaigner at We Own It. We campaign for public ownership of key services so that they work for people, not profit. And we were actually one of the organisations, along a handful, many organisations and campaigners here in Manchester who campaigned to bring buses under public control. Obviously, that's been a massive success. It was, a huge part of Andy Burnham's platform when he was campaigning in Makerfield and then for PM. But we need to go one step further and campaign for and have public ownership of our buses. We still have hundreds of millions of pounds worth of profit leaking out of our buses every year. That's money that could be used on things like addressing the cost of living crisis, and yet it's still leaking out of the system. Edinburgh are doing it, Reading is doing it. They have some of the best bus services in the country. So my question is, will you, if elected, bring buses into public ownership? And if not, why not?
Thanks, Sophie. And thanks for the work you do at We Own It. It's a brilliant organisation. And yeah, we need to own all the stuff, don't we? We used to own all the stuff, and now we don't. This is a 20-month term, so just need to be aware that it's probably impossible for anyone to actually finish that process in this 20-month term. But absolutely, as Greens, we believe that public services should be owned for public people and should be run for services, not to make profits. It's kind of obvious. The clue is in the question, is in the name, isn't it? I mean, we don't just want to stop at buses. We want our utilities taken back into public hands. We want our rivers and our water companies taken back into public hands, and we want our NHS to stay in public hands, because although it is still free at the point of use, behind the scenes we're seeing all sorts of companies, including of course Palantir, sneaking in there. So yeah, in the Green Party we absolutely believe in keeping everything, all of these big major infrastructure organizations in public hands, and I'll be doing everything I can to go the next step with the buses.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. So let's go right back to when the decision was made to franchise. And I think there was lots of people in the room that were saying, well, actually, what will tend to happen is, okay, they are yellow, but actually, it is all of the companies that were delivering the service that is still delivering the service. And are we getting what we want from the service? And what I would say is I wouldn't disagree with the way that they went about it, in that we had to just get franchising as quickly as possible and all of the legal battles that go along with that. But it's certainly not done, right? We've lost community routes before franchising. So just before all of the contracts were decided, everyone came together and decided, oh, actually, we don't make much money from this route. So if we sack that one off, then we'll come in. Yeah, okay, you can put some yellow cladding around the bus. That's fine, no problem. But they lost all of their routes that they were losing money on. But those were routes that they were given the contract for, because they also had Oxford Road Corridor. So they were making it was the most profitable bus route in the United Kingdom, I think. So that was the negotiations that were happening behind the scenes of the franchising process. And I don't really think that that's actually being properly publicly scrutinised, actually. And I think the next step has to be, we have to be the service deliverer. I think franchising has proved that it can happen in a way that actually there is public support for it. And so we need to make sure that we take that next step and lose because it's still a topic of conversation about profitability. I think the service loses 3 million at the minute. So we need to make sure that we're not in a process where we could save money. I think we could close that gap, that budget, that deficit actually by being the service deliverer itself. So absolutely, and I support everything that you do, and it's going to be a real fight. As Geraldine said, the 20 months thing on a practical level, I don't want to be able to promise that by the end of a term that it would be doable. But I think if we get political will in the city region to do it from all political parties, or as many political parties are willing to say it, and there'll be a couple that don't, that aren't here, that we have to deliver that. Because if we don't, then actually all of the ambition that we have about orbital routes and those community routes coming back, because those routes will make a loss, but it is a profit to our communities, even if it's a loss on a balance sheet.
Can I just add to that, as we got on to bus finances? I've got plans to increase the funding to our buses. I want to bring in an overnight visitor levy so that anyone who comes and stays in hotels and the like in our city region will pay just £3 a night. Not very much at all. It's not going to make any difference to their decision making. And loads of cities across the world do this, in fact, charging a lot more. And we're going to pour all of that into our buses. That's how we're going to fund free buses for under 22s and how we're going to fund express orbital routes around so that you don't have to go into the centre and out. You can go around from Rochdale to Wigan or wherever it is you need to go.
Okay, thanks. So we've got two questions as different aspects of social security. It's going to combine them together. So first, Angela, can you ask your question, and then I'll go to Ruth.
Hi, Angela. I'm from a radical mental health campaign in Manchester called Charm. I'm here. Hi. You've said that you'd like to influence Westminster policy. I think that's crucial because you're a person with a platform. So in April of this year, the government quietly cut 50% of the rate of benefit for new claimants on universal credit. It was the disability component. What would you do to stop future benefit cuts from occurring?
Just wait for the second question from Ruth, and then if Richard could answer first on these.
If you think this question's meant to catch you out, you're right. Can you please tell me what you think is the function of PIP, personal independence payment, and what is your attitude towards PIP moving forward?
Thank you for both questions. I will do yours first, I think. Is it Angela? Perfect. Yeah, so stopping future benefit cuts. Yeah, absolutely. So as a local councillor, I'll be really honest, the vast majority of my cases, especially the cases that come from across the city, even if it's not in my ward, they'll often come to my surgeries. It's around universal credit, it's around PIP, and accessing the service. The Mayor of Greater Manchester is a political role, and I think people forget this a little bit, actually, that like while we talk about a lot of the what we can and can't do within the powers, and we're very technical about it, we also need to be really clear about how we lead in a city region and how we represent that city region. So absolutely, like, you know, there was the economic forum where every single elected mayor was invited to number 10 North, which is very exciting. Let's hope that the revolving door doesn't come with it. But we need to make sure that mayors are actually leading from the front, and you have confidence that the mayor will stand up against any future universal credit cuts. On personal independence payments, to be honest with you, I'll be honest and say that my honest view of this is one that I've had for a very long time, which is that I just think we need a universal basic income, and I think that's just where we need to be. Like, I think we're way beyond this idea that between £30 and £200 a week is anywhere near a living sum of money. And I know that's a really basic answer to the question, but it's true. Like, as I said, I came from a really low income family, and a family that at time found themselves out of work. and I just refuse to accept that that's a livable amount of money. So I'd actually turn it all on its head. And I know that's a really complex answer to it, or rather it's a bit of a pie in the sky answer to it, because it's not within the powers of the mayor, but it's just my honest opinion.
Thanks. I mean, universal basic income is, Green Party policy that we have supported for literally decades. So obviously that is where I would like to see us going. It's not within the powers of the mayor, and it's a long journey from where we are here. So I think we need to be taking all the steps we can to get there. I think we absolutely need to increase the universal credit numbers. It's absolutely not acceptable. People are expected to live on amounts of money that we know you can't live on, and also we need to be just aiming for a little more than what you can just live on, shouldn't we? People deserve a quality of life as well. It's not just about meeting the absolute basics. I think as well, when it comes to PIP as well, it's not just about the amount, it's about the lack of dignity and the kind of performative cruelty that we have seen from so many politicians in the past. And we need a system where, people are treated with dignity, where everyone is supported and celebrated, and, that we are really glad that we have a system that backs everyone up when they need it, and everyone feels they have an amount of money they can live on. And as we've heard before, this isn't something the mayor can do, but this is something the mayor can be a powerful voice on and an ally on.
Okay, this person is definitely here. Joe Troop, you've got a question.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm from Trafford North and Trafford South food banks, and we are big supporters of the Greater Manchester Living Income campaign, who've helped to stage the event today. I'm also here with my colleague Emily from Manchester South Central Food Bank. They actually hold one of their food bank sessions in the building that we are in today. In food banks, we see firsthand how the broken social security system forces people to essentially come through our doors and rely on charitable provision to put food on the table, which is completely unacceptable. So with that in mind, my question is about the Living Income campaign. And I would like to know, if you were elected mayor, would you continue to support the Greater Manchester Living Income campaign?
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for all the work you do. I've been to so many food banks over the last few weeks, and it's that mixture of horror that we have them, and then the amazing compassion and hard work of so many dedicated volunteers and of course members of staff as well. I was talking to a 17-year-old a few months ago about food banks, and I made some casual comment about remembering when we didn't have food banks. And she couldn't believe it, because, of course, people buy into this idea that we used to all buy into, those of us who aren't old enough to know better, that life is we're making progress, that things are getting better. And, the idea that we now have food banks, widespread across our city region, whereas we didn't, say, in about 2009, is absolutely horrendous. And I think, we need to do everything we can, of course, to support this campaign, to ensure my plans for the rental housing is that it will be tied to local housing allowance. So the idea is that anyone would be able to afford to rent them. So I think we've got to keep working on making things affordable, looking at how much people actually have, and making sure that we are tying together, that we're not working in silos, that we're not looking at income separately to rent and separately to food and so on, because there is ultimately just one big poverty, isn't there, and one big inequality beneath all the many different varieties that we see on the surface.
Thanks, Joe. So, I mean, I remember my parents would be getting food packages, and it was a lot more hidden actually then, like, from family or friends and that sort of thing. And now when I volunteer at my local food bank, and I deliver parcels and food bags of shopping to people, and it's like, it's one of those things where, like, you always say, oh, it's as a local politician, you go, it's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. And actually we don't, because, like, because you actually really do see that vulnerability up front, and you realize like what it is and what world it is that you're operating in. When it comes to the Manchester living wage, it is very frustrating to me when I go through lots of things on Manchester City Council in particular, where the procurement process and some of the national legislation that exists actually prevent us making a procurement decision on whether or not a contractor is willing to pay the Manchester living wage as a basic requirement. What I would like is for this government, and they've said a lot about this, and obviously the previous mayor is now the Prime Minister, and I'll say it again, there's nowhere to hide on this, is if we need to make a change in the procurement legislation so that we can put to bed this idea that value for money, i.e. the cheapest possible contract that is available to us, is the only one that's available in local government and the mayoral region as well. So what I would like to see, if I'm honest, is the answer to your question, Joe, is yes. I would always support the Manchester living wage, and I always have. But I also think that if a Greater Manchester mayor is to really back this campaign properly, and I'll be honest, force it on local authorities, even where politically it's going to be difficult to do it, because we're going to be in a situation where Greater Manchester will be much more politically divided in the next couple of years than it ever has been, that we have to have the national legislation change to force things like the Manchester living wage is absolutely a requirement to some of the decisions that we're making. And I'd like to see the procurement rules change so that it puts much more power to GM level to set that standard. So I think the answer is yes, but we also need that legislation change to make sure that it can continue, and it can continue with some teeth and influence over local authorities in the decision-making process. Because if local authorities are setting an example, then we might be able to start forcing that influence over the private sector, which is always the elephant in the room, isn't it? How do we make sure that our private sector in the city is also signed up to the Manchester living wage?
Sorry, could I just follow up really quickly as well? So obviously you're talking about the national level there, and I think obviously the living income pilot would be something which would hopefully be really impactful in terms of changing the conversation nationally. So just, would I be able to ask you to both commit, if you were elected as mayor, would you continue Greater Manchester Combined Authority support for the living income pilot?
Yes.
Support, yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question is from Thomas.
Hello. So you've both spoken a lot about rent and housing being affordable. So do you support the demands of Acorn and others for rent controls across the city region as a step towards nationwide rent controls?
Yes, yes, I've already said that. Yes, I was out at a demo just the other day about this. In fact, and as I said, I did turn up to number 10 North on the morning of the announcement that the government was not supporting rent controls. I think this is outrageous. I think we need to, clamp down on rogue landlords who are, making endless amounts of money. And build to let is a particular bugbear of mine. We have so many entire blocks being built across our city region that are built to let. They will be bought out entirely, or maybe, in 2 or 3 blocks by enormous corporate landlords who will own them forever and will be extracting wages from people in this city region forever. I think it's so outrageous that we're even opening doors like that. So we need the rent controls, but we also need to be just not opening those doors, not saying, look, here we are. We are building these houses for landlords. We need our housing to be about homes, not about investment portfolios.
Yeah, Thomas, I think we discussed rent controls and my view on them. I mean, yes, absolutely, I support the campaign. I mean, also cite conflict of interest. I'm also a member of Acorn. I have been for a while, and I follow everything that Acorn does. But there's also, to build slightly on what Geraldine's just said, there is this situation, and I won't mention the company because they do keep threatening me with legal action. But we do have a situation where we have enormous private equity from abroad country will remain nameless as well. Coming into the city centre in particular and dictating the future of building and development across Greater Manchester. And it will soon be Greater Manchester. Like, I think we need to be careful that actually there is a threat to the affordability of our town centres as well over the next coming decade. I think there's a distinct chance that we'll be sat in this room in 20 years' time going, actually, we didn't learn a single thing from London, did we? Not a single thing. And actually, there is a crux point where it may be the case that practically the city centre now, and I don't really believe this, but I think it's an important thing to say, practically, I don't know how we deliver those rent controls in that city centre anymore. I think that there is room around the edges and there's room in certain pockets, and I think that, like, Manchester City Council in particular needs to take responsibility for this, and that's why I want to talk about cooperative housing and how to deliver that. But actually, there is a real opportunity in our town centres that we can deliver rent control, and especially rent control pilots. And we need to show it, because I genuinely do believe this. We need to show that it can work in this country, and I think Greater Manchester is best placed to do it. Not just because of our background, and also because of the politics that we all might have, but also because town centres, we have the opportunity to create place there. And if we're going to create place, we need to make sure it's as accessible as possible, especially financially accessible as possible. So I'd really like to see that when we look at mayoral development companies, when we look at the spatial framework that everyone talks about, again, the amount of houses that we want to build, is actually let's set targets within the spatial framework, and let's set rent control areas within the spatial framework as well. Now, central government will kick back on this. Angela Rayner just last week, all the weeks mentioned to get merged together, said that she would rule that out as housing minister. And that as a starting point is just really disappointing, because it just feeds into this idea that it's not possible. But I have family in Copenhagen, I have family in Berlin. It can happen. Like, it just can happen. It's political will at the end of the day. And I think if we start to show political will and, again, challenge the Labour Party in particular at the minute, which isn't a party that we would have expected to have to fight that hard on this, if we can fight that fight and make Greater Manchester the pilot, then maybe we can set the standard for the rest of the country.
Okay, we're moving into quick fire questions and quick fire answers. Emphasis on the quick. So to kick off, question from Clive.
If you probably answer this, to be honest, what a bad example of Manchesterism is. I've recently been in a couple of weeks in inpatient in MRI, and 5 lift shafts have been down for about the last 4, some for 2 months, some for like the last 4 months. I'm just picking the brains of the porters in there, you know, how far on the ground level. Sorry, like they're about 200 meters extra per ward in that particular area. I mean, you get the machinations of the hospital, the behemoth that is the bureaucratic behemoth of the NHS. How do you deal with it? Manchesterism, yeah.
So lifts are out of order at Manchester Royal Infirmary for many, many months.
I mean, this is basic, isn't it? It's like the idea that we have to enforce the Equalities Act on the NHS. You know, like but the point being is, like, we do need to do something about it. I mean, but there's lots of organisations that just fail on the basics, right? And I think it's what I was coming to at the start. It's like there's those services that you should expect to just get it, just don't. And yeah, and the private sector firms that are responsible for maintenance, absolutely. So there is a role within GM to hold that to account. But also, again, like coming back to that scrutiny point, we need to make sure that people like yourselves and organisations, like everyone in this room, is also holding those services to a standard. I could go on about examples that I have in my ward of housing associations that were flooded out in January of 2025 who still haven't replaced lifts, and I have residents who have not been out of their house for almost 12 months, which is absolutely outrageous. But I won't go into too much detail. It's quick fire, sorry.
Quick fire.
Quick fire. Thanks, Clive. I mean, it's obviously outrageous, isn't it? And I don't know the details of that particular lift, but I mean, this is the sort of thing we need to be holding the NHS to account on. The NHS, like you say, is a behemoth. It is absolutely mind-bendingly complex, as I'm sure you all know, and every time you learn the acronyms they go and change them again, and it's so complex, and it's such a political football. That is the problem as well, that everyone is afraid to try and fix it because it's so big and so complex. But yeah, we've got to be holding them to account and providing a decent service for people.
Oh, that's very handy. There's a quickfire hand right in front of me. There's no corruption here at all, I swear. All right, quickfire question.
In 2022, the Greater Manchester Inequalities Commission recommended that Greater Manchester set up an anti-discrimination unit on all areas of discrimination, which goes to the point about the point of having the Equality Act. If people in Greater Manchester don't have access to advice to use the Equality Act or actually get to enforce their rights, would you commit to setting up the anti-discrimination unit if you get elected?
I'm so sorry, I didn't catch all of that. Can we just get?
Yeah, so in 2021 or 2022, there's a recommendation from the Greater Manchester Inequalities Commission to set up an anti-discrimination unit in Greater Manchester that gave people the opportunity to use their rights under things like the Equality Act and Human Rights Act and other employment acts, so they actually get the chance to enforce the rights that they have, because currently people don't get the advice, or they've got to go through expensive legal cases, which multiple barriers for people. So would you commit to enacting that recommendation if you become elected?
The answer is yes. I think we can probably procure it through services that already are active within the city. Really good example of that, Manchester City Council recently had a decision against them, a legal decision against them over access to advice through council tax discount and receipts like that. Shouldn't be in a situation that we're in that, but again, it's another example of a service that's been held to account. We need to make sure that there is a service that's available to people, absolutely. But also we need to make sure that it is as accessible as possible. I think Greater Manchester is absolutely the place to do that. Because it allows us to actually hold local authorities to account in that process as well. So the answer would be absolutely yes, and I think it would be relatively easy to procure that service here in Greater Manchester at that GM level.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good, interesting idea. I hadn't come across this before. I think we absolutely need to tackle. There's so many intersectional problems facing us around inequality. In Trafford, where I'm a councillor, it's 8.5. There's 8.5 year life expectancy difference, and Trafford's only 10 miles across. You know, the inequality we're facing is startling. It goes across all sectors. We need to be tackling it in the police and making sure that our police, represent the communities that they reflect the communities they represent. We need to be standing up for all our different, underrepresented groups, whether that's migrants or Gypsy Roma traveller or people from different, ethnic and faith communities. So yeah, I think an anti-discrimination unit is a great idea. And as I say, it's not one I've come across before tonight. So I'll be interested in reading up on that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, hands. Quick fire questions. You've already had one, Shabazz, so I'm sorry. I'm looking for people that haven't already asked a question. See one right here, so... Oh, yeah. We've got an exciting mic runner as well. Oh, so great. Quick fire, come on.
Thank you. We're lucky to live here in a multicultural and accepting sort of area. What would you say, how would you address Greater Manchester residents who feel, I guess, alienated by the system, who feel that the only solution that can be offered is flags on lampposts? The millionaires' parties haven't turned up tonight. They didn't turn up at the LGBT hustings last week. So what could you say to people who have concerns and believe that the right has solutions to them? Thank you.
This is a great question. Thank you. I've knocked on doors for well over a decade, and I have seen, I've heard the answers changed. I've heard people move from being relatively happy with how things are to going down and down, and that loss of hope that we have. And I've heard those extreme views start to come out. I think a certain number of them were probably always there, but there wasn't social permission for them to be said out loud. I think what is wider is that there's been this weaponization of scarcity, that, the cost of living crisis, the years of austerity have been used to weaponize, the views of people against certain groups in our society, whether that is migrants or different ethnic groups. And I think We absolutely have to stand very firmly against that. We also have to listen to the people, because we can't shout people out of their views. We've got to listen to people, but then stand firmly against the most problematic views. You know, in my ward in Altrincham, we have a hotel where people are staying while they're waiting for their asylum claims to be processed, and we have a very small number of far right people come, mostly we think from out of town, to protest there, and it's caused quite a lot of problem. Most of the people I knock on the doorstep who have said they're voting for reform, a lot of them are just disillusioned with the old system. A lot of them, we know, look at the statistics, they all voted Labour 2 years ago. These aren't different people. They haven't been, many of them, of course there are people who've been radicalised, but many haven't been radicalised. Many have just been deeply, deeply betrayed, and they need to kick against the old system. And I mean, that's part of what we are always trying to do in the Green Party, to show people you don't have to go with the establishment parties, and you don't have to go with reform, that there is an alternative. There's a party who is not funded by any big dodgy donors, by any big developers, who are here. We are funded by the people who believe in what we're doing and by our membership. We're not, you know, we have no vested interest, whether they're self-interested lobby groups or big corporations or wealthy individuals. So I think having that authenticity and having those conversations with people is key to it. Tackling the scarcity too, because when there wasn't scarcity, we didn't have the problem. But we also need to know that the scarcity isn't going to fix itself, you know, and again, I'm going to come back to the climate crisis. We are going to be facing, you know, even more bigger waves of forced migration across the world for generations to come. And if we continue to have scarcity here, there will be people who will continue to try and weaponize that. You know, we've got to be absolutely welcoming of the people who want to come here. I'm someone who's come here. I'm from Ireland. But we've got to also try to make sure that people aren't forced out of their homes. We've got to try and tackle those push factors so that, you know, the people who are moving around the world are moving because they want to. But yeah, tackling scarcity and listening to the people who aren't the extremists, who are maybe voting reform because they don't know what else to do and they need to kick against the system.
Hello, mate. There you are. Yeah, so the way I sort of come to this is, listen, I'm from Middlesbrough, it's a post-industrial town. I'll be really honest with you. If I go back to the pub that used to serve me when I was 15 and go and meet my mates that are still living there, and I had a conversation with them about politics, I could probably guess how they would vote. And it's not going to be a way that I would like them to. But I've always prided myself on, I'm a community politician first, right? I love where I live, and I love talking to people, and I love advocating for people, and I love listening to people. And sometimes what you listen to is not always what you like, and you start to feel uncomfortable. I think that politicians at some point, and I think it was probably quite a while ago, stopped leading and started following. I think that we've lost that boldness in politics. I think that we need to improve. And I think that if we had politicians that were willing to put that community first, drop that rosette every now and again, and the colour of the rosette, and actually give a shit about the communities that they're meant to represent, then I think we might have less people turning to that far right offer. And then to the communities that feel ignored in that way, I think community politics is the antidote to it. I genuinely believe that. Now, I wish I could create some sort of magic potion and give it to every single politician of every single rosette possible to do it, but unfortunately we can't. But the other thing is very quickly on other marginalised communities. And I think it's a really important point because I think that we haven't spoken about it tonight. GMP, in terms of the safety for marginalised communities, GMP do let people down a lot. I represent a ward that has a synagogue, a mosque, and 4 churches. I think that the GMP has really let a lot of people down and a lot of communities down. Hate crime goes underreported. The way that the services fail asylum seekers is absolutely outrageous. Like the idea that it would be controversial to allow asylum seekers to work and contribute to our society while they're seeking the decision on their asylum is beyond me. I don't understand why we still in 2026 are having that debate. So I think there's so much more that we can do for those people who are marginalised. But I also understand the point that you're making, which is how do we make sure that there is an antidote to that far right extremism? And I think that our politicians need to start leading again.
Okay, I'm going quick fire. You've got 1 minute to answer and 15 seconds to ask the question. So I can see a hand up there. Gentleman in a blue top. Can you wait for the mic and then go?
The University of Manchester is one of the city's biggest landlords. With the new Fallowfield redevelopment proposed to cost students about £235 a week, how would you work with universities to prevent the city from becoming a place where the universities are only available for those who can afford?
Time's up.
Great question. And of course, universities are landlords. And of course, a lot of those big tower blocks are owned privately by other groups. And I'm pretty much sure they're built to let. Well, they are built to let, aren't they? I mean, I guess rent controls is part of the story here, but some of the rest of it is as well about that mayor's convening power that we've been talking about before, and making this a city region that works for our young people, because at the moment, nothing is working for our young people, and we need to fix that. So I think using that convening power, bringing together the universities, actually those big corporate landlords, and talking to them, and student groups, crucially getting those student voices in there, because lived experience is key.
Yeah, co-design is really important. We mentioned cooperatives and just changing the model, totally changing the model. It just needs to happen in terms of like how local authorities can step in there. Local authorities need to stop selling off its strategic land to developers that, quite frankly, have been predators to students. This idea that all the students now need to live in the city centre, well, actually not too far away, just outside of Hume, actually. And they've created this campus, and it's this wonderful thing. And then prices started to rise because that's always been their intention. It needs to stop. So actually, we need to empower planning committees to stop doing it. And local councillors that are on those planning committees need to stop voting for it. And it's as simple as that. But we need to make sure that there's legislative change to make sure that we can stop it, because at the minute, everything is in the hands of the developer. It needs to change.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. So, Shabazz, you've asked, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go with someone that hasn't asked. So, I can see the lady in green top there.
Yeah, thank you. So despite the disinformation and scapegoating of migrants, as we were talking about earlier, what we know is in our communities every single day, people are pushed and forced into destitution and deep, deep poverty because of immigration policy and the system that forces people into that, such as the no recourse to public funds policy that shuts people out of our safety net that's supposed to be for everybody. So I guess my question, and I know it's a long answer probably, but how would you support people who are destitute in Greater Manchester who are forced into that because of immigration?
Yeah, really important question. I want to make this a city region of sanctuary so that people know that everyone is welcome here, and that this is a place where people who are fleeing violence and horrendous experiences at home can come and will belong. I also want to look into our green councils in Lambeth and Lewisham are looking into how they can legally not cooperate with migration rates, because we need a really strong firewall between, for example, people experiencing modern slavery or people trafficking and the migration system. We need people to be able to come forward and tell our police, tell our public services what they're experiencing, and not be afraid that they will be sent back to an even more dangerous situation. That's my 1 minute answer.
Yeah, so a really good example of this is I was literally walking out the town hall a few weeks ago, well, months ago now, and a resident from the migrant hotel that is in my ward happened to just be there because he was told to turn up to the town hall and declare himself homeless. Why? Because he'd just been given the right to stay. He'd been granted his asylum a day before. Now, when we went through that system, it turns out that he was going to have to be homeless for 6 weeks before he got a penny of what he's entitled to. And that's the situation that we found out, and the safety net just simply doesn't work for people trying to navigate that system. Now, what I would like to see happen is I'd like to see local authorities have those sort of discretionary payments in order to get people through that temporary point. I think it's really key that intervention happens then, because while that person was absolutely over the moon to be guaranteed some income in 6 weeks' time, I was absolutely furious that that person would have to sleep rough or try and access some of the charity services in that period of time. And I think utterly that's a failure of local authorities. So that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you. So now we have closing statements. You've both got up to 3 minutes to end this husting. So Richard, do you want to go first there? And we'll finish with Geraldine.
Yeah, I won't stand up because you've heard a lot of what we've said tonight. And I just want to say first off, just a massive thank you. Someone said, and I can't remember at the start of this, that democracy isn't just about that cross at the ballot paper. And I really genuinely believe that. Before I was elected and after I was elected, I was politically active in my community. And I was a bit of a gobshite and a bit loud. And I think it's really important that everyone gets involved at the level of politics that you feel comfortable in. And this is just a really good example of where you can come, ask questions, but we can also listen to your experiences. And that's really, really valuable to me. And one of the really key guiding principles to what I've tried to do throughout this election campaign is make sure that we get, first off, local champions elected for their communities. I know that it's something that where Liberal Democrats fight really hard across the city region, where we win elections, we get local community champions elected. And that's what I'm trying to offer at this election. I will offer to you that I will be an advocate for everyone here in Greater Manchester, because that's what I know to do. That's what I've always prided myself in the community that I represent. Now, we've spoken about affordability. It's been one of the key areas across this debate. And I hope that those three areas that I've taken time to speak about, changing the way that Greater Manchester provides childcare by actually being a service deliverer. For once, can we please have a level of government that's not just local councils, that are holding local councils to account, but actually delivering services as well. Number two, delivering a different housing model. But it's not that different, is it? Because other places do it. And actually, the cooperative movement used to be, its home used to be here, and it's lost its way slightly, and we need to make sure that we can actually create the first cooperative in the United Kingdom for 40 years, delivering housing here in Greater Manchester, but also changing the way that the private sector could offer possible housing models, 5-year tenancies, and at the end of that 5 years, you get half of what you paid in rent back in the form of a deposit, so that actually, if you wanted to enter the private sector housing, you actually could, because I couldn't. I had to wait for my parents to pass away before I could enter the housing market, and that's just outrageous. And then finally, on social care and direct payments, and thank you so much for your question, because it's something that I feel so passionate about. We need to make sure that we address and understand how hard it is to access social care across the city region, the quality of that social care and the difference between each local authority, and the affordability of it. We talk about the affordability a lot, and we need to make sure that we have a clear idea, and that's what I think we can achieve within the end of this term. Now, that's what I'm offering at this election, a local champion that stands up to you and has a history of advocacy, and I hope, and I'll be honoured to get your support on Thursday.
Thank you so much to everyone who's shared their thoughts and their questions with us tonight. As Richard said, we always learn so much by these events, and I really appreciate everyone taking their time here. I've talked a lot about the lack of hope that I've heard from people over the last few years as I knocked on those doors, and the changing trajectory in those conversations as they've gone down and down. And we have seen the open goal that Labour have left for reform, and we have seen reform take advantage of that. And then I saw what happened a few months back when my Trafford colleague Hannah Spencer won that seismic win in Gorton and Denton. And I saw what happened to people knocking on doors, the activists who came out, the people who voted, people who changed the habits of their lifetime, people whose parents had voted Labour all their lives, coming around and seeing that there was a genuine alternative. And then I saw what happened in the local elections when we won these historic Green wins across Greater Manchester, right here in Hume, and across a really wide swathe of areas and across much of our country. And we also saw those reform wins. And the common denominator there was Labour losses, 100 councillors down, of 40% of their vote in Greater Manchester. We know the people need change. We know that putting a shiny new Prime Minister in front of the same 400 MPs, none of whom apparently was fit to be Prime Minister, is not the change that we need. We know that we don't want tinkering around the edges. We know that we want that hope we felt in Gorton and Denton. We want it back, and that we can make that happen. We need a mayor who's going to be for all of our city region, not just for the city centre, who is here to take Greater Manchester back from big money, to work for the people who live here, not for the big landlords and the corporate developers. I'm promising to bring us 20,000 genuinely affordable homes over 10 years, to give free buses to everyone under 22, to change our young people's lives, to get our high streets buzzing again, to celebrate our diversity and support all of our communities. And of course, as the first Green Mayor, to always put climate and nature at the heart of everything I do. You have to remember, in this election, it's not like other elections you've had. You have 2 votes. Supplementary voting system. You can vote number 1 with your head and your heart for the mayor that you really want, and you've still got your backup vote that you can use however you want. This time on Thursday, you have a chance to make real change like we did in Gorton and Denton. We don't need to tinker around the edges. We don't need to go to the dodgy donors or to the old establishment parties. We have a genuine alternative, a party funded by people who believe in us, funded by real people on the ground, people like you and people like me. So this Thursday, take yourself to the polling booth and vote number 1 for your Green Mayor to replace Labour and to stop reform and to give some hope back to Greater Manchester.
So just to inform, these are the people that couldn't come today for whatever reason. Sean Astley, Reform. Bev Craig, Labour. Phil Eckersley, Conservatives. Marcus Farmer, Independent. Marlon West, Restore Britain. So, gone but not forgotten. So thank you from the Great Manchester Coalition Disabled People. I'll now hand over to our other partner for a thanks.
Thank you very much from Acorn Manchester, and actually from Greater Manchester Living Income as well, because I do work for them as well. I just want to close by saying thank you very much to the candidates and for you all for coming. Like I said right at the start, going on Thursday and putting your first choice preference and your second choice preference is one part of politics. But politics is every day, including right here, right now. We've got not Reform members outside, sorry. We've got Acorn members who've been waiting very patiently outside, who are running a stall to help guide further action that you can take on the cost of living crisis right here, right now, every day, day in, day out, to make the world a better place. So please go and engage with them. Have a chat with people who've turned up. See about what you're going to do outside of just voting on Thursday to make the world a better place. Thank you very much for coming. I'll see you all soon.
And thank you to Richard and Geraldine. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you to our young members who came here to take part in democracy. Yay! Big shout for them. They're great. And all the wonderful people that came and helped, to Toyosi and Jessica, our wonderful PAs, to Pam and Craig, our fantastic BSL, and to Alex, our very favourite tech. Thank you, everybody. That's it. You can go home now.
Right, good work, Richard.
Yeah, it's a last of